If you know a man over 60 who's single, and he seems happier, lighter, and more at peace than a lot of couples you know, this video is going to explain exactly why. Because there's a behavior pattern among older men that almost nobody talks about openly. A pattern that explains why so many of them, after a certain age, simply don't want to get married anymore, don't want to move in with someone, don't want to live the routine of a traditional relationship. And no, it's not because they gave up on love. It's the opposite. Stick around until the end because in reason number 6, I'm going to tell you something that almost no psychologist says out loud, and it completely changes the way you'll look at older men who are single by choice. Before we start, subscribe to the channel and hit like, because that really helps this video reach more people who need to hear this. Let's get into it. For decades, society taught us one thing. A man alone in old age is a synonym for loneliness, for sadness, for poor guy, nobody's there to take care of him. But the numbers and the real-life accounts tell a different story. Research on well-being in later life shows something curious. A significant portion of men over 60 who live alone by choice, not from abandonment, not from loss, report life satisfaction levels equal to or even higher than married men in the same age group. That completely breaks the stereotype of the sad little old man waiting for someone. And once you understand the reasons behind it, it starts to make total sense. Before we go on, let me ask you something in the comments. Do you know an older man who's single by choice and seems genuinely at peace with it? Tell me down below, I really want to read your answer. And if you haven't hit like yet, this is a great moment to do it because this video only keeps growing with your help. The first reason is the most obvious, but also the most powerful: freedom. After decades of keeping schedules, sharing decisions, adjusting their own routine to someone else's, whether it was a long marriage or raising kids, many men reach 60, 65, 70 years old and discover, for the first time since their youth, what it means to decide their own day, alone. Waking up whenever they want, traveling without checking with anyone, eating what they feel like, whenever they feel like it, watching whatever show they want at whatever volume they want with no interruptions. It sounds small, but for someone who spent 30, 40 years negotiating every little detail of their own routine, that freedom has a flavor that very few things in life can match. And that's exactly why, for many of these men, giving up that freedom again to enter another relationship shaped the same way as before simply doesn't feel like a good trade. Here's something interesting about the male mind in later life. With age comes clarity. A 25-year-old man often enters relationships without really knowing what he wants. He tests things out, makes mistakes, learns. But a 60 or 65-year-old man has already lived long enough to know exactly what works for him and what doesn't. He knows he doesn't want pointless fights anymore. He knows he doesn't want constant demands anymore. He knows he doesn't want to feel obligated to explain himself all the time. And here's the interesting part. That clarity doesn't come from bitterness. It comes from experience. It's the difference between someone who gave up on the game and someone who deeply understands the rules and consciously decides not to play that way anymore. If this video is making sense to you so far, hit that like button because that's the signal that tells me I should bring more content like this. And if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, now's the time. Because every week we bring reflections like this on behavior, relationships, and life in later years. After age 60, many men start putting mental health as priority number 1, something that, through decades of work, marriage, and responsibilities, always got pushed to the back burner. And here's an important detail. Worn-down relationships full of unresolved conflict carry a very high emotional cost. Research on aging and well-being shows that low-quality relationships can even negatively affect physical health, raising chronic stress levels. Men who went through difficult, exhausting marriages or painful divorces often come to the conclusion that they'd rather have the peace of being alone than the wear and tear of a bad relationship. It's not about not wanting love. It's about not wanting to keep paying the emotional price of a relationship that doesn't work. After decades of work, many older men finally reach financial stability. And with that stability comes another kind of freedom. Not having to split assets, split bills, or split financial decisions with someone else. For many, managing their own money exactly how they want, without having to justify every expense or every investment, is a form of autonomy they're not willing to give up easily. That doesn't mean they're stingy or closed off to sharing life with someone. It just means that after spending so long building that independence, entering a formal relationship with everything that implies financially and legally starts to be approached with a lot more caution. Are you enjoying this video? Hit like right now because it really makes a huge difference for the channel to keep growing and bringing more content like this. And leave a comment below. In your opinion, which of these reasons is the strongest? Freedom, emotional clarity, mental health, or financial independence? One of the biggest myths about single men in later life is that they're bored, aimless, without purpose. In reality, many of them discover only after 60 hobbies, trips, friendships, and experiences they never had time to explore during their busy adult lives. Gardening, fishing, walking groups, dance classes, group travel, volunteering, learning a musical instrument. The list is huge. And what happens is, as they fill their lives with these enjoyable activities, the need for a steady partner just so they're not alone simply decreases. They're not alone in the sense of isolated, they're busy living the life they always wanted to live. And now we reach the point I promised at the start of the video. The real secret behind so many older men choosing to stay single isn't a rejection of love. It's a rejection of repeating patterns. Many of these men have already lived through relationships where they felt controlled, criticized, diminished, or emotionally drained. And the fear, often unconscious, isn't being alone. It's reliving the same story all over again. Psychologically, this has a name. It's a self-protection mechanism. After decades of life, the human brain becomes extremely efficient at recognizing patterns that have caused pain before. And instinctively, many men prefer comfortable solitude over the possibility of reliving a familiar kind of suffering. That doesn't mean these men are incapable of loving again. It means they've become extremely selective, and for a lot of them, living alone feels like a smaller price to pay than risking something that could go wrong again. If that sixth reason resonated with you, hit like now, because that's exactly the kind of reflection I want to bring here more often. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. We talk every week about human behavior, relationships, and life stages, and you won't want to miss the next videos. For much of adult life, many men build their identity around roles. The role of husband, provider, father, head of the family. When those roles start dissolving, kids moving out, retirement, the end of a marriage, a huge space opens up. And for many men, that space gets used to finally ask a question they never had time to ask before. Who am I beyond these roles? That journey of self-discovery is, most of the time, easier to make alone, without another person's expectations, without having to balance their own needs against a partner's. These men finally get to reconnect with who they really are, not just who they were trained to be. This doesn't mean in any way that single men in later life are closed off to companionship or intimacy. Quite the opposite. A growing number of them choose more flexible relationships, like living apart together, where each person keeps their own home, their own routine, their own independence, but shares moments of affection, travel, and companionship. This model, increasingly common among people over 60, offers the best of both worlds: affection, companionship, and intimacy, without giving up the freedom they value so much. It's essentially recognizing that love and full-time cohabitation don't always have to go together, and that realization has freed a lot of people from relationships that, honestly, no longer make sense in the traditional format. If you've made it this far, go ahead and hit like, because that shows you're really into this content, and that's the fuel that keeps this channel going. And leave a comment. Do you think this living apart together model would work for you too? All of this behavior reveals something bigger about how society views male aging. For a long time, we were taught to believe that an older man who's alone is an incomplete man, that he absolutely needs someone by his side to have a full, happy life. But what the stories and the research actually show is the opposite. Happiness in later life doesn't depend on marital status. It depends on purpose, on mental health, on meaningful social connections, which can come from friendships, family, community, and not necessarily from a romantic relationship or traditional cohabitation. This shift in mindset is, little by little, redefining what it means to age well. It's important to say, not every single man in later life wants to stay that way forever. Many of them do go back to dating, but in a completely different way than in their youth. More conscious, more selective, more mature. They're no longer willing to settle for just any relationship just so they're not alone. And it's exactly that selectivity that makes a lot of people ask, why does he never want to commit again? The answer most of the time isn't that he doesn't want to commit, it's that he's not going to commit to just anything anymore. He's learned, through decades of life, the value of waiting for something truly worth it, instead of repeating patterns just out of fear of being alone. If this video made you see the older single men you know in a different light, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it too. Let's quickly recap the reasons we covered today. First, freedom regained after decades of a shared routine. Second, clarity about what they don't want to live through anymore. Third, prioritizing mental health above everything else. Fourth, the financial independence built over a lifetime. Fifth, rediscovering hobbies and personal pleasures. Sixth, and maybe the most important one, the self-protection mechanism against repeating painful patterns. Seventh, rediscovering their own identity beyond social roles. And eighth, the search for more flexible relationship models that respect each person's individuality. So next time you come across a 60, 65, 70-year-old man, single, living his life peacefully, understand this. It's not a sign of failure, and it's not forced loneliness. Most of the time, it's the result of decades of learning, of self-awareness, and of a conscious choice about how he wants to live the time he still has ahead. And that's exactly why so many of them seem so much lighter, so much more at peace than people assume. If this video opened your mind on this topic, hit like right now, write in the comments what stood out to you the most, and subscribe to the channel, because every week we bring reflections like this on human behavior, relationships, and the stages of life. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video, which is going to cover a topic that ties directly into this one: why more and more women in later life are making the same choice too. Thanks for watching until the end. See you in the next video.